Good evening and welcome. Welcome to Facebook Live. What?
Center us.
You want it centered? All right, I'm gonna center you. How's that? Is that better?
Sorry.
All right, welcome to Facebook Live from CrediTV and the free credit repair advice group with Credilife financial wellness program. My name is Jeremy Dysock. I am a FICO certified Credilife credit coach, the admin and founder of the free credit repair advice Facebook group. And with me is
Rick Wenner, also a FICO certified senior credit coach. Glad to be hosting our content tonight on public records, bankruptcies, tax liens, judgments, anything that is on your public records when it comes to your credit profile.
Yep.
So
I always like to let the room fill up a little bit here. Well, while we have you here, what I'd like you guys to do is, while the room is filling up, while we're getting close to being able to really talk about this, if you have not liked and followed CrediTV on Facebook, CrediTV, CREDITV, our group, our page on Facebook, go ahead and throw that a like. And if you have not subscribed and followed CrediTV on YouTube, definitely check out our channel. It's got our past Facebook Live videos on it. It's got one of our classes that we taught for the Minneapolis public school system. It's got some other neat things. It's got some educational pieces. Again, that's CrediTV. You can even just go to Google and type in CREDITV, and the first video that will show up in the upper left-hand corner there for you will be a CrediTV video. It'll take you right to our channel, and if you like what you see, if you like what we have to say, give us some thumbs up, give us some likes, some comments. Definitely follow our channel. Okay, we've got 8 people in here tonight, 10 people now. It's starting to fill up a little bit. So tonight's topic,
public records.
Public records, bankruptcies, judgments, tax liens, how they affect your credit, and really what to do about them.
Absolutely.
You want to start off talking about them a little bit?
Well, first of all, I'd like to talk about where to find them or where to locate them on a credit report. And it's not always obvious because they're not embedded or they're not usually placed within. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen them placed within the account section. Nope. Typically on Identity IQ, you will have a separate section on your credit report that's labeled public records, and they'll all be laid out there separately. Sometimes you will see public records on a single bureau. I've seen it many times. Yep. More often than not, they're on all 3 bureaus. What I tend to see a lot of is I'll see a public record reporting differently to 2 bureaus, right, and then a 3rd bureau, it's got a different account number or a date that the
orientation date, a different,
dates will be different. And
bankruptcies, that happens a lot.
Well, because you'll have 2 bankruptcies that were discharged in July 17th, and then the other one's July 1st.
Right.
And they'll actually account as 2 separate line items on the public records. But we wanted to talk about public records for a couple reasons today, not only for the things that we'll get into, but what a lot of people make assumptions. I know we did the Mythbusters last week, and we'll get into some of the myths about public records today. But one of the biggest myths about public records is that the effect they have on your score.
Right.
All right. FICO is a mathematical equation. It takes into account, no pun intended, or maybe intended.
A little bit.
It takes into account factors that affect your score. I was going to try to play the straight guy tonight, but I can go either way, really.
Well, hey, college was interesting.
The idea being that words like bankruptcy, words like tax lien, words like judgment aren't factored into the FICO algorithm, but they're just as important when it comes to credit health and financial wellness, because it's a factor that impacts your profile. And just to get this started off here, where people get into the conversation here tonight, is defining the difference between the factors that affect your score, which you talked about, and you talk about a lot on the site, and something we call a credit profile. Right. The credit profile is your overall picture of your credit. It's the overall risk assessment of your credit. So things like a bankruptcy, things like a tax lien may not be functioning and affecting your score, but they are affecting your profile. For example, I could pull up my score tonight, and I could find out I have a 767 credit score, but lo and behold, I have a judgment for $8,300. All right.
Yep.
My profile is going to prevent me from being able to move forward with a lending opportunity. Not my score, but my profile.
Excellent. Yeah, so what we're talking about here, so it's not that the bankruptcy having happened is what's hurting your score. It's not that the tax lien is hurting your score. It's not that the judgment's hurting your score. It's the fact that when you go to apply for lending, the mortgage lender, they're looking at that, they're saying, look, our guidelines say no. Our guidelines say you can't have these things. Or you go for an auto loan and they say, hey, while your score is great, our guidelines, to give you the loan say you may not have an open judgment. You may not have money that you owe on your taxes, or maybe you need to be in some kind of documentable repayment program, sometimes with a history of payments made.
Exactly. Right. And these are the types of conversations that we have as coaches with our affiliates. Brian Kurzweil, for example, a few of you know him from the site. He's a loan officer, a loan originator. These are the things that typically come up as a surprise. Okay, when I was a loan officer, when Jeremy was a loan officer, these were things that were typically a deal stopper, not because of the score, but because for the first time in some cases since the bankruptcy or since the judgment, the consumer was seeing them for the first time. They thought, oh, water under the bridge, it's not affecting me anymore. Or the opposite, hey, I'm not even going to bother to apply. I know I have this public record. One other thing I want to get into before we start getting into the actual details of it on the credit report is where else this information could be. When Jeremy and I were originating loans, we relied on someone called a processor and someone called a title closer. And those individuals, as they're working up the credit profile and really working up the loan, would go to public records in other places. And so I'll ask Jeremy, because he'll tee these off pretty quickly. Where else are these public records?
I'll tell you, there's a lot of places. One is you can literally go onto something called PACER, which is the public record access for court records. You can get judgments there. You can get anything that's a matter of public record there. And Susan Washburn actually asks, can anyone see your public record? The answer is yes. Public record is just that. It's a public record of this taking place. Now, PACER is one location, but there are companies, not unlike credit bureaus, whose entire job is to take that information from point A and report it to point B being the credit bureaus. You've got LexisNexis. You've got SageStream. These are all companies, reporting companies, that hold on to this public record and provide it to Equifax. They provide it to Experian. They provide it to TransUnion, because Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they're not going down to the courthouse in Clark County, Illinois, and they're not going to the courthouse in Monroe County, Wisconsin, to try to see these records. They're getting them from somewhere, and they're getting them from SageStream. They're getting them from LexisNexis. So we get a lot of people who think, hey, okay, they're getting them from those places. Maybe I see a public record on my credit. Maybe if I freeze that, they won't get it. Here's the thing, they're still going to get that public record, because even though you freeze it for new information, you freeze that SageStream.
Is that like a Marvel comic thing? Like a freeze?
It is.
That's like a Spidey web?
You freeze, freeze the SageStream. So if you freeze SageStream, you freeze your LexisNexis. The bureaus are still going to be able to get this information because they have access to what was once reported, to verify what was once reported to them. So while no new public records could come through those conduits, the old ones, well, they're still there and they're still verifiable.
Absolutely. And so what you end up with is you end up with another third party. We sometimes refer to them as data furnishers that are holding this information. I'll go one step beyond that. So when a title closer goes to close on a home loan, they do what's called a name search. Okay, and they might do this name search through one of these data furnishers, or they might go directly to your municipal courthouse and have those records there. But to answer your question, Susan, it's public record, and the reason it's defined as public record is this information could be not only in a lot of areas, but anybody in the public domain is privy to it.
Yep, they've got access to it. So yes, anyone can see your public record. Ashley Nicole asks, can a public record be expunged once paid off? That's actually a legal question. It's a matter for the courts. Expunging, for those of you who don't know, basically is having the court say, hey, this never happened. These are not the droids you're looking at. You didn't see any of this information. It never took place. And then it can be removed. Yes, it can. It's a very lengthy and expensive process. Typically, it's a pain in the butt. You'll want an attorney. you are better off, or what we recommend is typically utilizing the investigation process instead and exercising your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA, to put the burden of proof into the hands of these people who reported it. You know, it only costs you the cost of a stamp. It's a lot quicker and a lot easier to do.
I'll weave one thing into that, and that is how some of these profiling factors, like public records,
Yep.
are taken into consideration on the lending side of things. Okay, most lenders want to be able to lend you money 2 years out from a bankruptcy.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of these factors, public record factors, in a lot of cases are being accounted for on the pre-qualification or in the qualification stages of the lending process.
Yep.
And have an age, or what we call a horizon, where these things are no longer being factored into the underwriting process.
Exactly.
Are you going to freeze me now?
Yeah.
Cheers.
To credit. Well, that's good.
That is good.
Yeah, we'll polish that off pretty quickly.
You'll typically find that those underwriting guidelines are usually pretty available if you look at terms and conditions. I know FHA has certain bankruptcy horizons that need to be met. I know most auto lenders have certain bankruptcy horizons that need to be met. But as far as removal of public records from the actual credit report, it fits right in within the investigation piece.
You got it. Susan asks, I see bankruptcies posted in the newspaper. Why is this done? Well, what that is, Susan, it's a notification to any potential creditors out there. They're legally required to do notification by publication to allow any creditors that may not have received a direct notice and give them the opportunity to show up to court and argue that you should not have your debts discharged in the bankruptcy. It used to mean a lot more when you might owe the local feed store, if you had a farm, or the hardware store. Yeah, Tom's Hardware, and Tom's going, man, this guy just got $1,000 worth of lumber from me. I'm gonna go down and fight because he's gonna be living in this house. He never paid for the lumber. Yep. So it's published to give people due notification. Tiffany says, yum Baileys. That's a due notification so that they can come down and actually fight the bankruptcy. Now, Alonda Bradley asks, can you dispute a public record for possible removal, just how you dispute debt on credit reports? The answer is a great big yes. You do it exactly the same way. Just like anything else on your credit report, the burden of proof is on the providers of the data to verify that this information is accurate and factual, current, correct, and verifiable today. And if they do not verify back within a prescribed time frame, that information is deemed unverifiable and by law permanently deleted from the credit profile. So great question. Yeah, you can definitely investigate that data.
Put a couple more points
on
that. Tiffany does a great job on the site, and this is something that we've talked about. On a typical credit account, there are multiple, over 22, 23, 27, depending on how you want to count it, different aspects of each account that can go through the investigation or certification process. On a public record, there are only 5 aspects of that account.
So you get 5 cracks at it, basically. So
there's a lot less information to be validated or verified.
Right. Great question. Great question. Crystal Jarrett says, does it do any good to attach a statement of debt judgment for view when someone runs your credit?
Read that one more time.
Does it do any good to attach a statement to a debt judgment for view when someone runs your credit? I think if the personal statement kind of saying, hey, no, this was my ex-wife's, or hey, this was the roommate that moved out on me, and that's why I got this. What do you call something like that? When you're evicted. I've never had one.
It'll come to me as soon as you go to the next question.
As soon as we're done with the video tonight.
I'll wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And
unlawful detainer.
Unlawful detainer.
All right. So does it do any good to put that statement there? No. No, not really. It doesn't affect the score. It doesn't.
One thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to public records is that it is the only time that information has been produced and published on your credit report that at some point a representative of our government has actually reviewed this information.
Yeah, a gavel hit the table.
A gavel hit the table. Somewhere, someone made a motion in order to produce this and put it on your credit report. So I call it the picture. The picture you would paint about your debt to explain this to them is is more often than not ignored.
Yeah. Let me crib it for Crystal. It's not going to hurt to put a statement on there about it. I mean, if you've got something, hey, was going through a big medical thing or something, just had a heart attack, something like that. It's not going to hurt you to have it there. It's not for sure going to help. It might get some sympathy with an underwriter. But you're allowed to put any comments essentially on your credit report that you want. There's even a comment section at the beginning of it where you can put a consumer comment. Mine says the streets will run red with the blood of the non-believers. That's what I had added to my credit report, basically just to see if it could be done, and it can.
I want to jump on, is it Shivine?
You want to jump on Shivine? Jump on Shivine.
Yep, we're going sledding, Shivine.
Wow.
How do you remove a public record once paid? Well, first of all, I'm going to back up on an assumption, and that is you're making a very large assumption that once something is paid, it has anything to do with what once reported.
Correct.
Okay. The fact that you paid on a judgment doesn't mean that a judgment didn't happen 6, 8, 10, 12 months ago when the judgment was open. So the fact that you've now paid it has nothing to do with what may or may not get removed from the credit report.
That it occurred.
That it occurred.
Right. Just a history that something went down. So the question before Rick jumped on you, how do you remove a public record once paid? I've had some people who have petitioned courts successfully to do it. I've had people with judgments go through and have the original creditor sometimes say that's fine, or write something out saying, hey, we agree to do this now that it's, we want to remove it now it's paid. And then the consumer yourself would provide this to the bureaus with some of your with your investigation letters saying, hey, they promised to do this, here you go. The best and most consistent tactic, though, is going to be investigating. Verification, validation, dispute letters, that sort of thing.
Once in a while, i.e. July 10th of this year,
you
will have our federal government step in and say, hey, you didn't do a good job of making sure that things fell off the credit reports.
Right.
So the federal government will come in and they'll actually expedite something similar to what the investigations that we provide do, and that is a wholesale verification of the information that was reported.
Yeah, there's a huge data dump. Tons and tons and tons and tons, millions of public records were removed because they hadn't hit all the, as Rick had mentioned, 5 criteria on a public record. They didn't, if it was baseball, they didn't touch all 5 bases. There's 5 bases in baseball, right?
For you, there is, Jeremy.
Okay,
there's 5 bases. Touch them all.
Fantastic. I was a theater kid. All right. Tiffany says, Yummy Bailey's. Tracy McLean Hodges says, so with a public record on your history, is it harder to purchase a home?
Depends on what type of public record it is. I'll go through them all 3 real briefly. If it is a bankruptcy, not if it's older than 2 years. It does not necessarily make it any more difficult to secure the financing for it. If it is a judgment, it is an absolute deal breaker. Think about it this way. The creditor went to that length to bring it to a public judgment because they wanted to be the very next creditor that you got paid, or that got paid. All right. So if I'm an underwriter and I see a judgment for $3,000, I don't want to put myself in a lien position or in any sort of position behind that debt, knowing that we've all cooperatively agreed as lenders that judgment needs to be taken care of. When it comes to tax liens, it's a completely different animal on tax liens, and it's going to come down to the lender. But more often than not, when it comes down to a tax lien, you're going to want to seek a professional tax advisor to work you through what becomes a bureaucracy and programs that are available at the federal or state level to remedy the tax lien. So all 3 are different. Bankruptcies, absolutely. You can finance just about anything in this country having had a bankruptcy. It comes down to the terms that you're going to get. When it comes to a tax lien, it's on the other side. I've seen people qualify for home loans as long as they're making their $200 minimum payment every month with the federal government, and they can show that they're making that payment. That $200 gets counts against what's called debt to income. And I'm going to talk about debt to income just in a second. And then ultimately judgments, judgment is a judgment. It's going to more than likely need to be remedied for any sort of asset financing like a car or a home. Debt to income is how most of these things factor into the underwriting process outside of the credit report. So I'll run through an example. If I had an $11,000 tax lien on my credit report.
Do you?
Maybe. Okay. It's not public record yet. I'm going to do my taxes though in a couple months. We'll find out. If you have, so what did I say?
$11,000.
$11,000 tax lien. If I went to an underwriter, if I went to Brian Kurzweil today and I said, Brian, I want to refinance the house. All right. He can take that $11,000 and count that against my monthly debt to income. Well, obviously, I'm not going to qualify to refinance my house if I owe $11,000 every month against my debt to income. Mm-hmm. However,
even with what you get paid?
Well, yeah, it would be tough. Yeah. But if I can demonstrate that I've been making consistently a $200 tax payment to the federal government, and now Brian can use that $200 against my debt to income ratios, now I got a much better opportunity to refinance.
That's great. That's great. Hopefully that answered your question that you had. As always, when it comes to these mortgage questions, you talk to a mortgage advisor. We do have one in the group who is FICO certified. We keep bringing him up. His name is Brian Kurzweil. We have worked with him as a peer in the past, and he is literally the only FICO certified mortgage lender I've ever heard of. He is happy to answer questions for you. And it's Spam Wednesday, so if Brian's watching and wants to throw up an ad in the group, today's the day for that. All right, so Susan asks, is there a criteria for when bankruptcy is the only solution or appropriate action to take? I guess so what you're asking is there something you want to look at and you're like, yeah, this is the only thing I can do? It's a good question. It really depends entirely on your goals and what you're looking to achieve, what you're looking to accomplish. If you're someone making $1 million a year and you've got 50 grand in credit card debt, yeah, you could do a bankruptcy potentially and get rid of the 50 grand in credit card debt, but is that going to be beneficial to you? No, maybe you make enough to pay it off in some certain ways. Maybe there's debt settlement you could do instead. It's all going to come down to what your goals are and the impact that a bankruptcy will have on those long-term goals. On the flip side of that, if you're talking to, like us, a certified Credilife coach, and if we flat out say to you, look, bankruptcy is an option in your situation, we're not allowed to necessarily advise bankruptcy, but the fact we're bringing it up should be pretty clear that we're saying, yeah, that might be something you want to really strongly consider. At the end of the day, if bankruptcy gives you the forgiveness on the debt, the relief from the debt so you can get that fresh start, it's a no-brainer. It really is if you're in catastrophic debt, it's the solution for you. And you can come back from a bankruptcy. You can buy a house eventually here. You can do investigations and get rid of the negative accounts that led up to the bankruptcy. Remember, that bankruptcy won't hurt your score itself. In fact, I've seen people do bankruptcies, and once the amounts of money they owed on credit cards were discharged, I've seen their score go up with that. Now, the negative impact of these accounts having gone bad that led them into the bankruptcy, that's still there. So that's when you'd want to either do credit restoration yourself or contact someone like Credilife to help you out with that. That's when you want to hit that point. But is there a bar that is like the instant bankruptcy bar or trigger? Not really. Susan.
It'll also depend on the type of debt, Susan. There's student loan debt, which is very different than medical debt, which is very different than credit card debt. But I would recommend any client, and I've had several clients who've asked me that same question. You need to balance out two things. You need to balance out what the bankruptcy attorney may advise you with what is my recovery plan going to look like. Because there's going to be a recovery plan,
right,
whatever way you look at it, that you're going to want to be, if you're going to be strategic in making that decision, you're going to want to make sure you have a recovery plan regardless of the decision.
Good questions, though. Great questions. Emily asks, can a collector still collect when they're included in a bankruptcy? They sold the debt to another collector. It's been 7 years. The answer is no, about 19 different ways here. If the debt's been discharged through a bankruptcy, you don't owe it anymore. That's bankruptcy. Also, if something's been 7 years since the date of last activity, in every state I know of, you're outside of the statute of limitations for actionability. So can they collect? They can't take collection actions legally if it's discharged. Can they collect if it's outside the statute of limitations? They can try, but they have nothing they can do about it. They can't sue you or anything of that sort.
Our colleague Chris Kruger terms that if it is in fact collectible debt that for whatever reason was missed in the bankruptcy, call it zombie debt. There's nothing legal, no legal action they can take to collect on it. One thing I will also caution on is it's very rare to see that situation happen where one or two things haven't happened. And I'm not going to diss any attorneys in this statement, but I know more attorneys than not will miss a debt, including it in a bankruptcy, and it just cover your bases. I've seen a lot of dockets. Dockets are the list of accounts that are included in the bankruptcy. Miss the Target card or miss the Dayton's card or miss
some big things sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes you see them miss some big things. So go back to your docket before you run down the path of a decision, Emily. Make sure you go back to your bankruptcy docket and verify if that information or that account should have been included or was included in your bankruptcy.
Good question, Emily. Erica asks, why does it take so long to remove fraud from your credit file after mailing them an affidavit? Go
ahead, finish reading the question. I'm sorry.
Why does it take so long to remove fraud from your credit file after mailing them an affidavit? Rick, I think you might have something you want to say.
Oh, pick me.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question, Erica, and here's the reason why. Credit is one of the few places in this country where your guilt over the information in there, the spelling of your name, where your guilt is assumed, okay? Now you've just gone to that same bureau, that same entity that's been holding this information, and now you're claiming fraud. You are now the exception. You are now asking to be forgiven for something that they've assumed your guilt on. Be patient with it. Make sure you've included a police report with a badge number on it. Make sure you are willing and able to provide any sort of information that would lead to a prosecution. Make sure you provide a notarized affidavit of the fraud, but be patient with it. They are going to go through the due diligence of investigating fraud, but they're also investigating whether you're the fraudulent party, and that's just the way it is.
So you're guilty, assumed right away until
Jeremy proves you innocent.
Until I prove you innocent. It's like Minneapolis. They just shoot you there.
Apparently, if you're from Australia.
They block traffic. Calandra Houston, why are accounts that were included in my bankruptcy back in 2015 being currently reported as missed payments? Now, if you're saying that they're reported as missed payments following the 2015 bankruptcy discharged, that's wrong, and I would definitely investigate that information. If it's being reported as missed payments prior to that, well, if you miss the payments, that's what's going on. Either way, I would take advantage of the sample letters that are in the file section, or a professional to verify, to validate, to investigate this data, find out if it's accurate, find out if it's up to date. Make sure, as I say, I'm kind of going Johnny Cochran, but basically, if they can't prove it, they have to remove it. So put the burden of proof into the hands of those who are reporting it. And, as to why it's happening, I don't know. Lots of weird things happen when it comes to credit. But that's what you can do about something like that. Good question. Erica, if BK is no longer reporting beyond 10 years, can the remarks or comments still show reaffirmation of debt or included in a BK? Do they affect the credit? Well, that's a great question. I know this one. Do you know it? Should I take it?
I just copy your answer, so you might as well give it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just make something up. No, but Erica, okay. Cool question. A lot of times we'll see this happen on a mortgage, because a mortgage is a 30-year commitment. You could have a bankruptcy 10 years ago. You might still have 15 years left on this mortgage, okay? Do the comments affect it? No, the comments do not affect it. Will it raise a red flag that there's been a bankruptcy? Well, it might. An underwriter can't unsee that. But being that it's so old, they also can't technically factor it into their underwriting decisions. That being said, let's go back to the fact they can't unsee it. So it can raise red flags. It's a great item to investigate. It's typically super easy to get rid of. Agreed. All right, that was easy. Ashley Nicole says, what does it mean if your public record says satisfied, but a collection agency is reporting it for the original creditor on your report? Well, that could mean a couple of things. Number one, it could be reported incorrectly. Verify, validate, investigate. If it's reported incorrectly and that's found out, you demand deletion. Boom, you just got your public records cleaned up. Otherwise, the creditor may not know. They may not be aware. It could have been sold. It could have changed hands.
Ashley, you bring up a great point that I have tried to, get clear on the free credit repair advice site, and that is you don't have to go shopping for a reason why the information may or may not be valid or may not be verified.
Right.
You don't have to go down the path of feeling like you need to justify asking the very same question you're asking right here. Put that burden of proof into the hands of the credit bureaus through an investigation process and make them have to justify it, prove it, and verify it.
Excellent. Excellent question. Brian Kurzweil asks, what's in the cup?
Eggnog.
That would be Bailey's Irish Cream, creamy salty beige. Deliciousness.
It is. It's
awesome. To quote old Greg.
And you know who
you ever drink Bailey's from a shoe?
And here's who delivered the ice for us.
Yeah, Jimmy John's was good enough to deliver the ice and a couple of sandwiches for us here tonight. So aside from drinking, you may get to watch us eat a sub sandwich. Won't that be pretty? So Brian, yeah, that's what we got. Here, wait. I'm going to duck off really quickly into our. I have some people who preloaded a couple of questions for us in the group because they were not going to be able to necessarily be here. Something to remember again: if you haven't followed CrediTV, CREDITV on YouTube yet, go ahead, check us out. Just Google CrediTV, CREDITV. It'll take you right to our channel and follow it. We've got all the videos of our past Facebook Live. So if we covered something, you're like, wow, they said that really fast, or Jeremy drank so much Bailey's he's slurring, or whatever the situation is, you can always go back, rewatch those things as many times as you need. It's a resource for you. So we're going to start off with Jim Petrovic. Hopefully I got your name right. And if not, well, tough crap. I've got the microphone. Okay. You say, let's say your spouse decided to dispute a collection online instead of in written form by mail. Can you come back and dispute again, but by mail this time? Asking for a friend. Yes, Jim, you can. When you dispute, when you investigate online, you give up a number of rights. One of them is the right to sue them. That's quite frankly one of the things you enter into. Another is essentially a right to notification should an item come back on. Oftentimes they'll delete it. The original creditor will report it again, and it comes back on. They don't have to give you the 5-day written notification or anything like that. And the last thing by disputing online is you give up the right to a paper copy of result letters. That being said, you've got rights, federal rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and you have a right to verify, validate, investigate, and get paper records back of that. So yes, you can go ahead and you can investigate with a letter.
Yes, sir.
Anything else to say on that?
And you should. You
should, absolutely. Do it in writing. If you're trying to make a paper trail, real good way to do it, paper. Paper works well for that kind of thing. Thanks a lot, Jim. Awesome question. Susan had asked, is there a criteria for bankruptcy? I think we got that there. Oh, she said, what can and can't be included in bankruptcy? House, car. You know what? You can include dang near anything with one major exception. Student loans, federally backed. They won't discharge them. You're probably better off borrowing from the mafia than you are for federal student loans. Do you have anything on that?
No, you can't include federally backed guaranteed student loans.
Oh, if you owe money for a criminal fine.
No, can't pay.
Yeah, you can't put that in there either. So my jaywalking tickets, I'll just have to pay them. How much does it cost to file for bankruptcy, and are there separate fees for the attorney in the court? How much it costs depends, quite frankly, on the bankruptcy attorneys in your state. Honestly, I would look in the phone book or Google and go for the person with the biggest ad because they probably do the most bankruptcies. That being said, there is a separate filing fee for the court than there is for the attorney. Up here in Minnesota, I'm seeing rule of thumb about $2,200 for an individual these days for bankruptcy. And lastly, can you remain in your home after bankruptcy if it was included as part of the bankruptcy? Potentially. If you do something called reaffirming it, basically taking the loan back on, taking on the payments, and if you're in a situation where you didn't need to liquefy it, sell it to pay off the damages, basically if you had a normal judge, not a horrible judge, yeah, you typically can. Again, please speak with a bankruptcy attorney.
Absolutely.
Good questions. Here, Sarah, you want to take Sarah's? Can you see that from there?
Sure. Sarah asks I had a lawyer office call me the other day about a judgment from a hospital bill. She
wanted me to agree to, you're getting old.
Yeah.
She wanted me to agree to pay $200 a month. I can't afford that. And she got really hateful, so I eventually hung up on her. She said she was calling because they were notified I got a job and will be garnishing my wages. Right now that isn't possible as I don't have taxable income. That was a temp job they were notified of. How should I proceed? Well, if you're not making any money right now, it's tough to garnish, number one. Number two, they can do nasties. Depending on your state, they could levy your bank account potentially, meaning quite literally you go to try to buy something with your debit card, and all of a sudden you find out there's no money there for the burrito you just ordered. And it's very embarrassing, and you're at Denver International Airport on a business trip, and it's your first day there, and you have to go home. It's never happened to me, though.
Never happened.
So,
well, here,
go ahead.
Great job reading the questions. I'm adjusting to my new glasses. But one other thing I will mention on that, Sarah, is the idea of what's called a pocketed judgment, where in a pocketed judgment, it's a decision that was made previously by the courts. Sure, to pocket the judgment and wait until you have an asset or an income that can be seized. Look it up. Look it up in your court. Look it up in your public records, and make sure you don't have a pocketed judgment sitting out there, because the last thing in the world you want to do is assume it's not out there or you can't see it. Go to deposit money in an open and active checking account, find out there was a pocketed levy against the bank account, and then for them to take your rent payment out of your
or your burrito.
Or your burrito.
You can't pay for your burrito at the Denver International Airport.
I've seen the size burritos you eat. Those you should finance those.
And they got a hell of a burrito. It really is a fun. Denver International Airport. If you ever get the chance, you got this big burrito place. It's delicious. That's where they did the really aggressive frisk of me.
We'll have to put that on.
That poor woman. Yeah, I will. Okay. They grabbed my junk. Tammy Carlisle says, I have paid a tax lien. Does it make a difference if it's state or federal with getting it removed? Also, it's not showing up in my search, and old paid tax lien from years ago that's not even on my credit anymore shows up in my search. Doesn't really matter if it's state or fed, kind of all the same thing at the end of the day. Getting it removed, again, doesn't matter if it's state or if it's fed, all the same thing at the end of the day. Not totally positive of what you mean about the search unless they're doing a public record search for title work for a home. If it's not showing up anymore, hooray.
Hooray.
All right.
Look it up in public records.
All right, that's what we've got. That. So we're going to get back to the live questions here. Alonda says, seems like a judgment counts more negatively against you than a 2-year-old bankruptcy.
Depends on the situation of what you're looking to finance. But yeah, in general, a judgment is more negative overall on your credit profile simply for one reason. A court, our court, a public court, has said this has to be paid either through a levy, a lien, or a garnishment.
And with a bankruptcy, I mean, quite frankly, it already happened.
Yeah.
An open judgment could, they could drop the hammer on you at pretty much any time. Shalonda Turner says, is it best to pay off a debt or wait for it to fall off? Will paying it off improve your credit score? If it's not, pay for delete. You want this one?
I'll take the first part of it.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to take this idea of something falling off your credit report. This is one of my favorite things. This is like Santa Claus, okay?
Who is real?
Who is real?
As is Krampus.
As is Krampus.
Krampus.
All right.
Takes children, puts them in a bag, gets them reads.
Let me modify that a little bit, all right? You have to believe in Santa Claus for him to show up, all right? There is no such thing as something falling off your credit report.
Right.
It either came off your credit report because you did a proper investigation or hired a service to provide a proper investigation, or a certain statute came about where they pulled it off your credit report. It doesn't just magically disappear or fall off. Some kind of protection law or regulatory function is making that happen.
Right.
And I just want to make that point because I think I see a lot of people sitting around just hoping and guessing that it's going to fall off.
Right.
I hope today's the day it falls off.
Today the day it just disappears.
Today's the day it's going to fall off.
It's magic. It just poof like that.
All right.
Makes
So
that sound.
I wanted to answer that, but will paying it off improve your credit score? I'm going to leave that to you.
You know what? Will paying off? I wasn't really paying attention.
The second part, will paying it off improve?
Oh, the debt. Will paying it off improve your credit score? Here's the deal. If you pay on an old debt that's reporting negatively on your credit score will actually drop. There's a reason for this. What you're doing is you're adding a new DOLA, date of last activity, to an already negative account. So the thank you that you're getting for actually paying this thing is, well, it's a something you. There's not a lot of thank involved. So here's the deal. What I tell customers and clients professionally, and what I tell everybody in the group, is while paying on, from a credit standpoint, while paying off an old collection that's reporting negatively on your credit report, while it's a step in the credit restoration process, it's just not necessarily the first step. The first step is to verify, validate. The first step is to investigate, to put the burden of proof into the hands of those who are reporting the negative information. Now, if they're not able to, again, within a prescribed amount of time, verify or validate that it's accurate and factual and current and correct and verifiable today, not back maybe a year or 2 years ago when they put it on there, but today. If they can't do that, by law, it's permanently deleted. Now you go to that creditor and you set up and negotiate a settlement. You have the most power in this process that you ever had. You've got a creditor who's got an old open collection here. They'd like to get some money for it, and you've taken away their power. They cannot report to your credit report. So your negotiations will be a little bit different. So some people ask me, well, then why would I pay it? Why don't I just wait to see what happens? Well, the what happens will be one of two things. Number one, they'll sue you, and that sucks. Or number two, they'll sell it to another collection agency because they made no progress. And that new collection agency will report it to your credit. Why? Because they're legally able to, and you completely undo all the positive that you had already done.
Question answered.
Question answered. All right. Tiffany says, follow and like. Yes, that is our CrediTV on YouTube. And Tiffany, I hope your child was listening about the Santa Claus, because Santa Claus is real, as is Krampus. All right. Kimberly said, paid the Comcast bill on my report. Can I call Comcast and ask them to remove it? Yeah, sure. Why not?
You can.
Sure.
There's nothing that says you can't.
There you go. Esmer says, I just received a collector's letter from a Verizon account, but I thought I'd paid it off and my contract was over when I moved to a different company. Should I ask the collector for an itemized bill and contract? Great thing to ask for. Tell them what you told us. Say, hey, I thought this was paid off and done when I moved to a different company. I'm thinking this may not be money that's actually owed. Please demonstrate, please validate in these circumstances that I really actually owe this money to you.
I'll go one step further, if that's all right. And we have 3 people in the room, so we can take votes on this.
Yeah.
I would go directly back to Verizon.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Verizon, they'll know. They won't know.
Right. Now this gets back into some soul searching you need to do as a consumer, which is your intention to settle the debt and you're just trying to track down who you owe, or am I trying to fight this through a verification and validation process? Right. If it's the latter, where you're trying to go through a verification and validation process to get an itemized statement of how they arrived at those terms or how they arrived at that number, go back to the original creditor, especially if it's a utility type bill, okay, like Verizon, your garbage man, your garbage type bill.
Right. Excellent question. Susan says, I am scared of being sued as the interest keeps building. Well,
Susan, I'm gonna assume 2 things, and then I'm going to answer your question. I'm scared of being sued, all right, as the interest keeps building, all right? I'm going to make 2 assumptions. One, you have no way outside of the box of taking care of it now, meaning you can't liquidate an asset, a 401k, anything, and you're being afraid of getting sued. I'm going to make another assumption, all right, and that is there's nothing preventing that lender or that creditor from suing you right now. It's not like they're holding back to wait for you to make a decision. Right. They're making that decision to move forward on a lawsuit based on information that they've had since the day you filled out the credit application. It is irrelevant as to what the current balance is, the interest that's being owed. So based on those 2 assumptions, you have to do and play the cards that are in your hand. If you do not have the ability to pay it, and you do not have the ability to settle it, worrying about being sued is something you should have been doing since the first day, because there was nothing preventing them from suing you the day it went into a charge-off, okay? Now, with that being said, keep your eye on your mailbox. be diligent in watching the communication that comes to you via the mail, because that is more than likely where you're going to see the movement that they're actually going to take legal action.
Get ahead of it. Just get ahead of it.
Yep.
Yatisha says, I am late. So, well, you know, here we have nice things. We make a Facebook Live, and it's we publish the time. Yatisha's late. Anyway, so let's see. Let's see. Will you explain again how a judgment affects? No, it's a great topic. How a judgment affects me buying a house, and what I need to do if I can't pay it. Ooh. An open judgment will oftentimes just flat out stop the process. You just, thanks for playing. We got some wonderful parting gifts for you. There are some lenders that will allow judgments up to a certain level, you know, 1,000, 5,000, depends on the loan program, depends on the lender, depends on the source of the financing. So it will either just completely stop your ability to buy a house until it's dealt with, or potentially inhibit it, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yep. I'm gonna and by the way, I'm not saying this directly to you, Ms. Robertson. I'm saying this in just a general sense here as we talk about credit. Why in the world would a lender lend you $200,000 for a home when one of the last people that entered into an agreement with you took you to the point where they brought a judgment against you? And I'm not sounding that for me to be judgmental. I'm saying that because the judgment has already been made. They are all collectively working together through the bureaus to get this money collected, and they've all agreed that if there's a judgment standing out there, everybody else is going to have to stand in line behind it.
Right. Not a good place to be. All right. Michaela, hello. How do I get rid of multiple inquiries? We get asked about inquiries a lot.
I say we table it.
You want to table it?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now, Michaela, if you are looking right now, where you sit right now, and inquiries are your biggest concern when it comes to credit, revisit Jeremy's document called
Pro Tips.
Download it and go through it, because if that is the only thing that Credit Karma is telling you that you need to focus on when it comes to your credit, it is flat out wrong.
Yep. And Rick has one in the file section of the group. They're both in the file section of the group. He's got one called Credit IQ. Excellent. You want to read both of them. It'll really set you on the right.
I just don't think your eye is your focus is where it should be when you're looking at inquiries. I have done over 17,000 some element of credit restoration in my life, and I've never gotten to the point where I've said, now we have to deal with inquiries. It's just never happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, inquiries is kind of like deciding what color the icing on the cake should be when we haven't even thought about what type of cake we should make. Here's why I say that, by the way. It's not to mock. It's not to do anything like that, even though we can be painfully harsh in the group sometimes. It is out of love. Legit. It's out of love, and it's out of trying to protect you guys. But here's the thing. The inquiries. In the FICO algorithm, the big, bad mathematical formula that makes your FICO score, your lending score, the score used by 90% of all banks in the United States. In that, recent activity, which is where inquiries land, only is responsible for 10% of your FICO score. Now, if you got a 90 in school and you came home, what would your parents think about you? They'd be like, yeah, that's all right. That's not terrible. You're making some progress, maybe doing good. In some schools, that's an A. Not in Jesuit Catholic school, but in some schools, it's an A. So that's 10% of it. Now, if you have not optimized your credit cards, your revolving debt, if you're not in a 1 to 3% ongoing utilization, that makes up 30% of your score. If you've got lates, if you paid late on credit cards, if you paid late on your car, things like that, that history of repayment, the ability and willingness to repay in a timely fashion, that makes up 35% of your score. So let's say just the credit cards. Yeah, you're worried about your inquiries, but your credit cards, you got a $500 credit card, you owe $400 on it. Guess what? You just got a 70 on that test instead of a 90. If you go in with a 70 on the test, mom and dad aren't going to be quite as happy, right? So we have to focus on the big issues. We'll worry about the icing once we pick the cake.
I agree. Agreed.
All right. And that is Chris Kruger in the background, also who just said agreed, one of our FICO certified Credilife credit coaches and a moderator there in the group. All right. Eduardo says, disputing personal information? What's the best way? Mail, fax, or call? Mail.
Mail.
The end. They keep putting old addresses back after I already deleted. Okay, here's the reason for that. They have got this daisy chain of a zillion addresses, and it's from every time you inquired. It's from every time something was reported about you, and they may have your old college address you lived in, you know, the apartment you had. They may have that on there 3 or 4 times. You're looking at your credit report. You're maybe seeing 2, 3 old addresses. So you investigate, you dispute, you say, hey, those are my address, and they go, okay, you're right, fine, and they take them off, but the other ones move up, and the other ones move up. It took me a while on mine. I'm just bizarre for a countless number of reasons, but on this one, I'm bizarre because I just wanted my current address on my credit report. Nothing else, nothing prior, ever. It took me a dozen rounds of investigation to get through all of the previous addresses. Now I've got it down to where I only have the address I live at. You know how much that helps my credit score? Not at all. It doesn't make a difference.
You don't have to look at your ex-wife's address anymore.
That's kind of where I went with that exactly. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's saying no. It's nothing but love for her, because of the court order that doesn't let me say bad things. All right. Angie says, I have thousands in hospital bills. Brain tumor. Can't pay. What should I do? Damn. I'm sorry to hear this.
Yeah, Andy, that's a tough break. I'll tell you right now, first of all, focus on your health and the things that are going to make you well.
Yep.
When it comes to financial wellness, hospital bills can be tricky if they're reporting. Go right back to the pro tips. Go right back to the Credit IQ. Work up a plan for investigating. Work up a plan for validation first, and just work that process through. That's going to be the first step.
All right. Hey, Angie, I'm going to tell you, too, nothing wrong with this. This is off the credit topic, but go back to the billing department at the hospital. A lot of hospitals, especially if you go to a Catholic hospital, a Lutheran hospital, a Jewish hospital, you know, or maybe one that's a different not-for-profit, they've got grant opportunities. They have got forgiveness on some of these things. They've got financial help. And, I mean, you could be making $50 grand a year, and if you've got $1 million in med bills, congrats. You need financial help. You know, you're not poor by any means, but you got $1 million bill. So do not be the least bit afraid to go back and find out what programs are available. Also check with your county, with the CAP agency in your county. Some of the counties and some of the states have programs for things that are typically considered catastrophic medical. I know this, I've got a son who's had a lot of medical needs. There's no shame, there's no harm in taking advantage of those things. You got to look after you, your family, and your best interests. So hit those things. Alonda, nothing wrong with tough love. Yeah, we'll dish it. Angie, you're welcome. We love having you guys, all of you guys, as a part of the group. We love the contributions. This is a big organic group of unbelievably over 31,000 people. We've got, you know, the old it takes a village. F the village. We've got a city that we're running here. And when I say we're running, I mean we basically just herd the cats. But you guys are driving the contribution to the content with the questions and the ideas and all this stuff.
I said this to Jeremy earlier too, and we were talking in my office. This here is a petri dish of things that you guys are providing, opportunities, problems, yes, but opportunities for us to create solutions around. And put our content in a position where it's working. It's working. I love nothing more than to hear on the Free Credit Repair Advice site that somebody figured it out.
Right.
The light bulb went on. They got on the path and they ran for it. Russell's probably the best example. That guy, he was one of our first members. He picked up the baton and he ran as fast and as far as he could. So I love that. And there's no amount of professionalism, kudos, or money that I could ever make that would replace the opportunity to help somebody like that.
Yeah. So the thing is, this this group and you guys, you made us. If you guys think we're really good at what we do, believe it or not, y'all played a really big part in that because you challenged the hell out of us. And you ask us questions that a lot of times we come up with the answers, but you may see you asked 6 hours earlier. It's because we're going, damn, we better find an answer for this woman or for this man.
Well, and Chris is off camera, and I'm not going to speak for Chris, but it's made us all sharper. We all now look at each other and go, well, Chris, what do you think? Or Jeremy, what's been your practice in the past? And so it has allowed all of us, not just the three of us that are here tonight, but all of us to not only be sharper at what we're doing, But as 3 guys over 40, it's forced us to hit the books.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I've done more research in the last year on my profession than I did my senior year in college.
It's all because of you guys. It's all because of you guys. But I tell you what, it's made us very powerful at our craft.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's in the Credilife program will be able to tell you that it's a whole different animal. There's a reason we call it financial wellness, not just credit repair. Sorry, that's a soapbox tirade, but
that's
yeah,
good.
Thank you guys. We
appreciate
appreciate you guys.
It's been awesome.
It's really been amazing. Tiffany says, how long after a BK can I apply for more credit? Credit cards or an auto loan? Oh, that's a softball. She threw us an easy one.
She must.
We love you, Tiff.
Softball in high school. How long after a BK can I apply? Well, first of all, on a Chapter 7, there's a hard discharge date.
Yep.
The trustee will generally require you wait until that bankruptcy's just been discharged to start building, but that's not always the case. There are some bankruptcy trustees who will allow you to enter into a $300 limit credit card during your bankruptcy.
Right. Right. You got to talk to your trustee if you're in a Chapter 13. You explain to them what you're doing. You know, hey, I joined this group on Facebook of all places, and I'm going through and I'm following a self-driven credit restoration program. And as part of it, I understand that a credit card is necessary or a revolving account is necessary. It makes up 30%. I mean, you come at them with that, and they're going to go, yeah, okay, you're one of the ones I'm going to allow to do this. You got to be
proactive.
Right.
You're admitting the situation, but you're also taking on responsibility way sooner than most of your peers are in wanting to take responsibility for managing your credit.
Yeah, trust me, people who are in bankruptcy are thinking about the day that they're out of it and that they don't have to pay anything ever again. Somebody who's thinking about not only when they're out of it, but how do I put myself into this amazing credit position, this amazing financial position, this amazing life position, so this type of thing never happens. Trust me, the bankruptcy judge does not want to see you again in 7 years. They don't. They'll get angry at you. Really, honest to God, some of them get little attitudes on them.
They will.
All right. Great question. So really, how long after a Chapter 7? Next day. How long after a Chapter 13? You can do it during a Chapter 13. You need to ask your trustee.
Yep.
All right. What else we got going on? Tiff says, how long after a BK is discharged? Well, you have been talking to her. Look at the artifacts.
Yeah, she's good.
She's learning your artifacts thing.
She's got it.
All right. How long after a bankruptcy is discharged can I start challenging the artifacts left from those accounts on my credit profile? You want me to go?
You know what's ironic about this is I actually had a guy come in my office who was part of that landscaping team that came in.
Oh, nice.
He came in.
Did you ever talk to him about the lawn mowing?
I did talk to him about the lawn mowing.
He's not in the area?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't work in Savage.
Anyone want to mow my lawn? I'll pay you.
Had a group of landscaping guys come in last week, and it was a team of guys, and one of the guys enrolled in our Credilife Credit Improvement Program.
Right.
He literally has his Chapter 7 bankruptcy discharging on the 17th. I'm holding the file on my desk, and literally the next day after I verify that it's discharged, we're going to open up the floodgates and start working on his file.
I've done it while people are in bankruptcy.
I have done it several times while in bankruptcy.
It's sort of potentially a little dirty trick, but some creditors consider reporting to credit while you're in the stay of adjudication in bankruptcy, meaning they can't collect for this little 3-month period when you're in this Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Some creditors consider actually reporting to the credit bureau as a collection action, so they don't do it. So it's sort of like, it's like, well, it's like cheating.
It's a collection action.
It's a cheap.
I was just going to say what Chris said. I don't even consider it.
Right.
They are holding your future credit hostage.
The bastards.
But that's the whole point. That's the whole point. And don't negotiate with terrorists. Make them verify this information.
You see my tattoo.
You can start the process certainly at any time to answer these questions. You can start the process at any time. General best practices to wait till it's been discharged.
Right.
But you can start. Yeah.
If you want to play the game, we'll show you how.
We can
basically.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome questions, Tiff. Eduardo asks, do you really need to notarize your letters? Eduardo, no. Professionally, in all the time I've been doing credit restoration, I have had notarized exactly this many letters for thousands and thousands of clients. So yeah, no need to do it. Not a lot more to say than that. Also, well, it's certified mail.
letters.
In the whole time I've been doing credit yourself, I've sent exactly this many letters.
Jeremy might have
certified to the
sent one
bureaus.
out in crayon a couple times with.
I like to write in blood on empty pizza boxes.
No,
I did it once before I knew better.
Oh, there's Chris. Hey, wait, we got to get you. If you're going to be here, there he is.
Yep. I did it once before I knew better.
The
I learned
man,
a lot since
the
then.
myth, the legend, the Credilife coach. Now get the hell off my camera.
Right.
Yeah, you are again playing into this illusion if you think you need to create a paper trail for what the creditors do. The best practice to get into is have online credit monitoring and monitor result letters.
Tell you, there are a lot of groups on Facebook, and I know this is where you're hearing it. There are a lot of groups on Facebook. They are not run by credit professionals. Some of them do not allow credit professionals into them. Think about that for a minute. You're going to get advice from people who are not, they don't allow credit professionals. It's like a hospital not allowing professional doctors into it.
And they're not doctors.
Right. I mean, you could go to the hospital with the non-professional doctors. They may have a general idea of what they're doing, but you might get, circumcised again or something. I don't know what would happen. I'm just not willing to risk
the wrong leg.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go with amputations. That's probably a lot more age appropriate or crowd appropriate than where I was headed. But you're hearing these types of things, and these are misconceptions. That's all they are. Write in blue ink. The computer can't scan blue ink. Wrong. They can scan a wild technicolor of different colors. Put it on colored paper. There's no way to look at it on colored paper. Wrong. They can also work with colored paper. Handwrite it. There's no way they can read handwriting. I can e-deposit with U.S. Bank and with TCF, and they can read a handwritten check. So my guess is if one of the worst crappy service banks in the country, I gave two, so you have to guess which one it was, can read that, my guess is the bureaus have it pretty well established. So those are misconceptions. It's not your fault. It legitimately is not your fault. You're told this, it's repeated, but no, you don't need to notarize, you don't need to certify, you don't need to Crayola, you don't need to write it in blood on a pizza box.
You don't need to justify a reason for doing it.
No, we had one gal come in our group one time and say you had to write in crayon and to use French and write in nonsense languages and stuff. That's where the blood on the pizza box came from.
One of the things I'd like to do, and I'm glad Chris is in here, I'd like to do an event one night where we talk about what are some of the reasons why a creditor isn't going to verify information, or why a third-party collection agency is not going to verify information. But it comes down to three reasons that have nothing to do with a trick or something you provide. Either they don't have the information, they don't want to verify the information, or they already got what they wanted out of it, which was a settlement, payoff, or a bankruptcy.
Yep. Here's the thing, they're not playing a game, they're not doing anything like that. They either don't give a crap or they haven't got it. It's nothing sinister. It's not not some crazy system you can manipulate. Put it to you like this. It's not how the letters look, how they smell, how they're delivered, anything like that. It's the content of the letter.
Yes.
And there you go. What was the topic you wanted? I'm making that right now.
Topic. Why would a creditor fail to validate or verify information?
That's happening on January 3rd, 2018. That's our topic for the Facebook Live. Do you want to take the next question? Because I'm
hopefully we're not all hungry.
Well, I tell you what, we're gonna be cutting this short here in a few minutes.
We got it.
I want to thank you all for taking time out on obviously this time of year. Time is a little bit more valuable to all of us when we're spending time with family, friends. I will put this out there. I want to challenge you, and this is something that Jeremy and I have challenged ourselves with going into this next year. We are at 31,000 members. Jeremy turned on the lights a year ago. I want to see how many people that you all have that you're friends with on Facebook that would all benefit from what you've experienced on the site in the last year. And I want you to share any link that you see on the Facebook page with your friends and family. And
they won't be able to see it.
What's that?
It's all private. They won't.
It's all private.
Here's what we can do though. If you know your idea is sound, if you know anyone who can use the data, if you know anyone who could use credit knowledge that you're not going to get anywhere else, Well, that's a loaded question. The answer is everybody. But if you know anyone who could benefit from this, you've got the ability on the right side of the page if you're on a PC, and then somewhere the hell up here if you're on a mobile device. You've got the ability to actually flat out add your friends, your family to the free credit repair advice group. Now we still have to give them the go-ahead, but we're going to see that they've got you in the group. Of course, we're going to get, we're going to let them in. Also, share our link. If you want to spread the message, spread the gospel, share our link. Now, things that you can easily share. You can share CrediTV. That is open and active. The reason we have the free credit repair advice group set to private is, frankly, it's nobody's real business what's going on with your credit when you're asking a personal question. Now, if you're worried about a friend or an employer seeing it, the only way they can see it is if they're in the group. And if they're in the group, it's kind of like when two people bump into each other at a strip club and you never really mention it because you were both there. So it's that type of thing. There's an understanding, kind of a nod and a wink. No, but share this stuff. Share the link to the site. It's facebook.com/groups/free credit repair advice. Put that on your page. We love this stuff. Follow us on Facebook. Follow CrediTV on Facebook. Follow CrediTV on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. There was a question asked earlier, and this kind of led me to why I wanted to conclude with this is, someone asked earlier, why are bankruptcies reported in a newspaper? Well, I'll tell you, there's one thing that the banks, the lenders, the people in that creditor piece can't do. They can't provide more content in the space that Jeremy's created online. They can't. They can't. We have more members, more content, more information, more driven, more passionate. So share that with some people that you know that you bump into over the next few months, few weeks here as you go into the holiday season, and get this information out there. It's only as powerful as who we share it with.
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy. I'm going to save the remaining questions we weren't able to get to really quickly to the post about questions for tonight, just so we have it. There we go. This will be a huge. Whoops! Look at that. All right, I'm going to save that. Boom. All right, so last housekeeping things. Everybody check the files section of the group. There's great files. The Credit IQ is in there. Check the file section of the group. My pro tips article is in there. There are samples of letters. There's all kinds of good stuff up in there. Also, CrediTV. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. That's where you're going to see this video, the recording of this video, able to be rewatched. That's where you see a number of different videos, educational, Facebook Lives, things like that. We do have coming up next week on December 20th, our live Q&A, 7 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be live Q&A. When should I hire a professional? Basically, when do I know I'm in over my head? It can be on the credit. It can be on bankruptcy. It can be on a lot of these different things.
Rebuilding.
Right, rebuilding. When is it time to say, okay, I can do this, and when is it time to possibly enlist a professional? Because if you're thinking about hiring us and you don't need us, I got to be honest, I don't want you to hire us. Save your money. If you're thinking you might want to hire us, you're not sure, or some other credit professional, it's just going to be a good way to determine, yeah, this is a situation I might need one for, and these are things I can do myself, and we're going to be the first people to tell you how to do it yourself. The biggest concern the head of our company had when I started the free credit repair advice group was, don't give away the farm, don't give away the farm, don't give away the farm. So the first thing I said to him, I said, I'm going to give away the farm. And I filled out the file section, gave letters. And he's like, oh, man, you can't put letters in there. Don't give away. I said, I'm going to give away the farm. So I put the 6 and 9 letter in there.
Meanwhile, we've sold 5,000 farms.
The people who need it and need help, seek the help. The people who just need the boost, need the information, and can do it themselves, we give it to. We're about education. We're about doing this right. We're about financial wellness. It's not just a slogan. It's not just a tagline for our company, but Credilife is a financial wellness company. I consider the Free Credit Repair Advice Group to be a financial wellness group. Again, for Credilife and for CrediTV and for the Free Credit Repair Advice Group, I am Jeremy Dysock. FICO Certified Credit Life Coaches. We've got Chris Kruger, FICO Certified Credit Life Coach. We thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you have a great night. We'll see you in the group.